You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 4th episode of the Be Strong, Be Positive podcast right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. A very special guest in this episode, delighted to be joined by Caitlin King. Caitlin, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
No worries, how you been, all right?
Yeah, I've been good, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Obviously, the past year or so has been pretty strange for everybody, but I know yourself, you've been very busy. Just talk us through what's been happening in your life in the past year.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm in Halifax in Nova Scotia at the moment. So we are just starting to things are starting to go back to normal a bit now. So we're back out and about at bars and restaurants and doing some gigs and doing lots of writing and working away and just easing back into normal life, hopefully.
How much have you been missing it?
A lot. It's definitely been, as I'm sure it has for you, it's a big adjustment when you're used to your routines and seeing your friends all the time. And
definitely, we've obviously had your dad on the football show as well. Did you make his performance in that?
Always great as always.
Brilliant. See as well, just as like what's things been like in Canada, like during lockdown? Like how different is it to normal life? Like what have you felt kind of big differences were?
I think the main differences have been, for me as someone who enjoys being out and about a lot, I think the biggest adjustment for me was the sudden kind of dip in socializing and adjusting to new ways of socializing with people. Obviously Zoom calls have become a big thing, much more of a big thing than they were before. And it was just at the very start when we were still under full lockdown, it was getting used to connecting with people that way. And I definitely missed a lot of the person-to-person interaction more than I realised, to be honest, right at the start.
Definitely. When did you move to Halifax? Where were you before that?
I was actually in Toronto before that. So I moved to Halifax in August 2018. Right. I've been here for just over 2.5 years now, coming up on.
And what's the difference? What's the difference to that in Scotland where you grew up?
It's a lot of it's quite similar in terms of the culture and like that. There's a really good live music scene here. There's quite a bit of kind of pub culture going on. People like to go out a fair bit here, which is nice, and everyone is very, very friendly, which is lovely. It's been easier, I would say, for me to meet people here than it was in Toronto because the kind of hustle and bustle there, people are a bit more focused on that than just hanging out and chilling. But
brilliant. How excited are you when this is all over? What's your first plans when everything's back to normal?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you, because I would hope that some of it's going to be back to normal here by maybe the summer. Maybe bars will be a little late and things like that again. And if that's the case, lots of road trips, lots of beer gardens, lots of just actually hugging people again would be nice. But
sounds brilliant, doesn't it? We'll get a bit about your early life as well. Obviously, you grew up. Where did you grow up in Scotland?
I grew up in East Kilbride, just outside of Glasgow.
What was that like?
Well, if anyone knows East Kilbride, they'll know exactly what it was like. But it was it was great. It was we had a really, really good bunch of pals there, and really good. We were pretty close to most of our family members as well. So it was. I had a decent time growing up there. School was fine. Everything was fine. But then obviously it hadn't been that great because I pissed off to Canada when I was 20. So.
And what was the reason? What was the reason you moved to Canada?
I transferred with a job at the time. I was working through in Coatbridge with a recruitment agency, and they were opening up an office in Toronto, and the opportunity kind of came up, and I thought, it's a good time to do it. I'm young, I've got no ties to anything in Scotland apart from obviously my family and my friends, but I didn't have a house or anything like that. So it just seemed like a really good opportunity, and I thought, why not?
Brilliant. Your dad obviously was very kind of high up in the media, the sports media in Scotland. Did you follow the football when you were young, and who was
I did. I did just finish watching the game right there as well. So still very much follow it, even though I'm not, anywhere near home anymore. But yes, I've definitely kept up with it over the years, and it's something that I would say it's one thing I do miss about home is actually being able to go to games, because the football culture here is not quite the same. People aren't quite as they are at home.
And see, obviously, your dad obviously been having quite a good job. You must have met some good people. Who was some of the ones that stick out to you?
Honestly, we did meet like a lot of really lovely people over the years through that. Walter Smith is just an absolute gentleman. Just one of the loveliest people you'll ever meet, to be honest. I think he was just such a sweetheart. And yeah, he's definitely top of the list for me.
Brilliant. School, your school life as well. What was your kind of memories at school? Like, did you have kind of tough times, or was that what kind of?
There was definitely some rough patches. There was more for me. I had quite a good experience in school, and then towards the end of school, it got a bit rough. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think at that time, there was a lot of pressure to, if you got good exam results, go straight off to uni and just kind of do something with those exam results. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I did that whole thing, went straight off to uni, and then promptly dropped out 6 months later because I had no idea what I was doing with my life, basically, and why I was going to spend the next 4 years there getting a degree that I probably wasn't going to use at the end of the day.
What were you doing at uni?
I was doing English, Lit, Political Science and French, which is an interesting combination, to say the least.
Was that your plan leaving school? Did you kind of have an idea what you wanted to do when you left school?
I had not a clue, to be honest. I had absolutely no idea. So I think a lot of the kind of push then was, well, if you don't know what you want to do, go to uni and you'll figure it out while you're there. But for me, that wasn't really the case. So I went to uni, and then when I realised that wasn't going to be the thing for me, not at that stage of my life anyway, I started volunteering with the East Kilbride Community Trust, which is a charity in East Kilbride. And through them, I met the lady who had become my boss at the recruitment agency, which would then transfer me to Toronto. So it all kind of worked out.
So it fit quite well.
Yeah.
And obviously when you were in Scotland, what did you like to do in your spare time?
Lots of music. I used to do lots of open mics in East Kilbride and in Glasgow. And I used to read a lot as well, which I still do. And just lots of, I met like a really good group of pals when I was there, that most of whom I'm still in touch with. And I think like that's definitely like my, all my good memories of home are to do with family and friends, and just there's no people like Scottish people, like they're very unique in pretty much every way. So there's definitely a lot of good memories tied to that.
Brilliant. How do you feel when you're singing and performing in music? How good does that make you feel?
I enjoy it a lot, but regardless of how long I've been doing it, which I think it's been about 10 years now, I still get very, very nervous beforehand. So I have I've got like a gauge where I know how many pints I have to have before I go on. So I'm nervous. So I've got that like down to a T, because there was a wee while where it was like, oh, that's not enough, and then, oh, that's definitely too many. So now it's at the perfect level. I know how many pints I need to have before I can go on without like absolutely crapping it, basically. But while I'm up there, I do enjoy it a lot. It's just the initial nerves are always there still, no matter how long I've been doing it for.
Definitely, they're always still there. Like, what as well, you touched on reading, like, you obviously do a bit of writing as well. Like, do you feel kind of good doing that? Like, is that kind of clear your head a wee bit sometimes?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things I've always used to kind of process what I'm thinking, because otherwise it just feels like a big jumble of thoughts in your head. But I think for me, there's a bit of a cathartic thing about actually just writing it down and seeing it in front of me, and then understanding, oh, that's why that thought popped into your head at that time, and that's why you feel that way about this thing. I think when you're just, when everything's just sitting in your head and you're just going over and over and over it again, it's not helpful to you in any way. So I think writing it down is definitely something for me that's been a really good outlet over the years.
Yeah, definitely. See as well, like obviously making the move to Canada, what was kind of going through your mind when you kind of took that leap of faith to go?
I think the biggest thing for me was I was concerned. I think this is the thing for a lot of people, but just the fear of what if this doesn't work out and I've done this big massive, made this big massive move, and what if it doesn't work out? So that was the biggest concern for me, but it was definitely a learning process as well, because I was so young when I moved, and I was really lucky to have people that I worked with that were really good mentors, and also just very supportive in general, who wanted to see me do well. So they kind of like didn't really make that an option for me. We're always there to help, and obviously I had my family, everyone as well, to always kind of back me up. But it was definitely a big, what if I do this and I make this big thing and then I just end up back home 6 months later?
And obviously your family footstep to come out with you. Like, how good was that?
Yes, I'm very glad they're here. Yeah, they were in Toronto for a while as well, and I had moved to Halifax before they left Toronto. But now they're in Halifax too, and we've just got my wee brother and his girlfriend back in Scotland,
Yeah.
and hopefully they'll be able to visit soon when this is all.
Definitely. See, just like the mental health side of things, like just talk a wee bit about your kind of experiences, if you don't mind. Like, what's kind of talk us through some of your experiences.
Yeah, of course. So I think like I was saying, I did drop out of uni, and at the time, when I look back on it now, I know it was the right decision, but obviously at the time it was a big deal for myself, and obviously my family were worried about it as well, because they knew it was to do with mental health things that were going on at the time. So my experience with it has been, at that time, a lot of things happened, and I made a lot of decisions because I wasn't talking about my mental health to anyone. So I was just letting things pile up and letting problems, just go by the wayside until they were mounting. Whereas, and again, that's to do with writing as well. Over the years, I've gotten a lot better at managing that and actually talking to people about it.
Yeah.
It's through writing, or whether it's just talking to a pal or talking to someone in my family. But my experience with it when I was younger was definitely, I think the conversations weren't quite as open as they are now. And hopefully there's still a lot of work to be done around those conversations, but they're certainly better than they were when I was a teenager. It was so different than it is now. Like, I see a lot of people younger than me now on social media talking about their own experiences. And that just wasn't happening when I was that age. It was just one of those things where it just wasn't discussed as much as it is now. So I think my experience with it it's changed a lot over the years, and where I am with it now, I feel a lot more in control of it than I did back then.
Yeah.
Which is always nice.
Definitely. See, just as well, you mentioned social media, like you're quite kind of vocal on it, like a lot of positivity in social media. Like, how do you find that as a tool?
I think it's great. I think it's one of those things where it's a lot of people, they have issues with social media because there's obviously things that come from it on the negative side, like there's, especially with younger kids, with bullying and things like that. But it's such a good platform for connecting people that wouldn't have otherwise known each other, but they might have a shared experience.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where, you can read someone will put something online and you'll read about their experience. And I think even if it does nothing else, it just helps knowing that someone else has gone through the same thing, and you're not, you're not just the only person who's dealt with something like that. And I think it does help to kind of end the stigma around talking about those things as well, when people are vocal about it and they do talk openly about struggles that they've had or ways that they deal with things and how they manage their mental health as well.
Definitely. See your job as well, like just what do you kind of do when things are tough for you? Obviously, just talk about what you kind of do as well, and how you kind of cope when things aren't going brilliant in a day.
Yeah, so one of the main things for me was realising when I'm struggling, because a lot of the time when I was younger, I did just ignore it. So the thing I always try and remind myself now is, catch yourself before you get to that point where things seem to be going horribly wrong all at once, or things are building up. Before you get to that point, just talk to someone straight away, so that it's not a case of, oh, now I need to talk to someone and I need to talk to them about 10 different things. Like, it's more more of a nip it in the bud type approach, I suppose, than the way I used to deal with it, which was to let things build up and to let things just get worse and worse and hope that if I just pretended they weren't there, then they'd just go away, which that never works out.
Definitely not. Spare time, what do you get up to in your spare time? Like, apart from obviously music, like how do you kind of relieve your stress sometimes? Like, what's some of the things that you got up to?
I do a lot of reading, definitely, and then I've also become kind of obsessed with. Do you know what Duolingo is?
No.
Right, it's this app that you can learn languages on. So yeah, it's great. I've become a wee bit obsessed with learning French on there. So sometimes I need to get out of something that I'm doing that doesn't require too much concentration, but it still feels productive to me, because sometimes I think I struggle sometimes to take an actual break because I feel like I'm wasting time if I'm not like achieving something. But so a lot of the time, if I'm feeling a wee bit stressed, I'll just open my wee Duolingo app and do some French, which like nobody wants to hear anyone speak French in a Scottish accent, but it helps me. So if it helps me, then it's like.
That's brilliant. That sounds brilliant as well. Like would you say your job sometimes is high pressure?
I don't think it's high pressure from an external point of view, but I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well at my job. So I don't feel pressure coming from anywhere else necessarily, but I do put a lot of pressure on myself to do well. And I do kind of obsess over things that probably nobody else is thinking about. Like I'm like, oh God, I sent that email and I missed an apostrophe in you or something like nobody these things. And I'm like, oh, my day is over. Like it's the worst thing that ever happened. But it's definitely something that I'm working on as well. Always is to kind of be a bit easier on myself when it comes to work and when it comes to just life in general. Really,
you find that hard to do that? I know that's something I struggle with. I think I do sometimes, but sometimes I'll make a mountain out of a molehill and things like that. But are you the kind of same as me in that regard?
Yeah, I think it's just really easy to do that because I think it's like it's that thing as well again about like being in your own head too much. It's just like if you think about this issue that's probably not even an issue in the first place, and then you just let it sit, and then it suddenly becomes this big massive thing, and you're like, oh, no one else has even noticed this. Like nobody even.
Yeah, definitely. What's the plans like in the future? Obviously, we touched on that earlier on, but are you kind of thinking about coming back to Scotland at some point for a holiday?
Yes, I would absolutely love to. I've actually not been back since I moved to Halifax, so I've not been there.
Okay.
It's the longest I've gone without being home since I moved to Canada. I've not had a pint of tenants in God knows how long. I don't know. I can't even tell you the last time I had a pint of dying for a pint.
Can't tell the last time I've had a pint of tenants either.
I bet, I know. Oh.
Brilliant. Obviously, you on Instagram as well, but you spend a lot of time with your family. Just how important are they to you? Like,
oh, they're number one, absolutely number one. They're my friends as well. The friends I've kind of, as they say, chosen as family. They're the ones that have been there through everything, and they've always been there for me. So if I'm now at a point where I can hopefully be there for them a bit more than I was when I was an angsty hormonal teenager. So they're absolutely everything to me. They're always top of the list, always top priority.
Brilliant. Just as well, like last thing as well, like obviously your spare time, just how important is it that you enjoy your spare time, do you think?
I think it's key, especially now. I know a lot of people, they've shifted to working from home, and it can be a bit difficult to separate work and home now, especially if you're not used to doing that. So I think it's really, really important that you draw those lines between work and your spare time, and that when you do have spare time, you're not letting work bleed into it, and you're actually making time for yourself and doing things that you want to do, not just because you're like, well, I work from home now, so I might as well keep working anyway. Like, you need to have the mindset of separating the spare time out and making sure you take a break from everything that's going on as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've really enjoyed having you on the show, Kayla. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah, so much. It's been so nice.
Brilliant. Best of luck for the future as well. It's been really nice to
yeah, you too.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Pleasure. Cheers.